All right, guys, this is gonna be chapter 6. Sorry about the car alarm. Um, Somebody don't know what's going on in the parking lot. Lifting and moving patients. So this is gonna be important for your safety and well-being throughout your whole EMS career. It's very important that you lift and move with good mechanics. That way you can keep your back. You can keep your legs and everything else in good, healthy, maneuverable shape throughout your whole 30-year career if you choose to do this. So you need to be able to move patients without injury. They will have to be moved several different times when assessing, treating, and transporting the patient to the ED. So you have to be moved into a different position or location. Will likely involve the use of a stretcher, backboard, and other devices. So you might need to be able to perform body drags and lifts, move a patient from a vehicle onto a stretcher, assist the patient from a chair onto the stretcher, or lift the patient from the floor onto the stretcher, carry a patient up and down the stairs, possibly place a patient with suspected spinal injury into an immobilization device. So there's just many, many different ways to move patients that we have in our bag every day. So being able to do this safely, efficiently, and quickly is the main thing. Sometimes it's best just to slow down and come up with a way that's safe for everybody involved, and make sure that there's enough hands there to be able to move that patient safely also. All right, to ensure nobody gets hurt, suddenly bears unexpectedly dangerous weight, and to reduce the risk of injury to a provider or a patient, you need to know where all providers should be positioned. Okay, making sure there's equal ones on each side. How to give and receive lifting instructions and commands. And how to prepare patient movement devices such as wheel ambulance stretchers, stair chairs, backboard, scoop stretchers, folding ambulance stretcher, basket stretcher, flexible stretcher. Okay, and when and how to use these moving devices also. So proper body mechanics need to be used when standing upright. The weight of anything being lifted and carried in the hands is reflected onto the shoulder girdle, the rib cage, and the spinal column inferior to it, the pelvis, and then the legs. And that's how your weight's going to be distributed. So the shoulder girdle is aligned over the pelvis. The hands are closely together, and that force is exerted against the spine in a central straight line. So keep your back in a straight upright position. This is not good here. And lift without twisting or bending. Okay. He needs to bend his legs a little bit more. That is a hydraulic stretcher, or they shouldn't have. They probably need to go up one little level, I guess, and then that's the manual stretcher. But I have known people that were twisting with a backboard and transferred a patient over to a hospital bed, and he completely ripped his back out. So please be mindful of those maneuvers. Okay, this person here is completely bent over. We do not want to do that. We want to bend our legs a little bit and at our knees and go from there. Okay, the legs need to be about 15 inches apart or shoulder width apart, with your back held upright. Bring your upper body down by bending the legs. Properly grasp the stretcher. And grasping the stretcher is kind of going to be up to you as far as the hand over or the hand under technique, like you would do a power lift and deadlift. Some people like to put both hands under. That's okay too, especially if you've got the control end. But I don't know if I would recommend both hands on top, because once you kind of get up above your waist, you possibility of losing it. So don't lift a patient or a heavy object with your arms outstretched. Hold your arms and your elbows aligned with the sides of your body. Keep the weight you're lifting as close to your body as possible, and avoid bending at the waist. Okay. Face with your palms up. Keep your hands at least 10 inches apart. Insert each hand under the handle with the palm and facing up and the thumb extended upward. So Here we've got palms up, so never gasket a stretcher or backboard with the hand down, palm down over the handle. Okay, that way you don't lose the weight coming out your fingers. All right. This action needs to be coordinated. Usually, the person at the head is the person that's going to be calling the shots, but just good communication amongst everyone needs to be done. Okay. So the team leader needs to indicate where each team member should be and rapidly describe the sequence of steps to perform before lifting. Okay. All right, all ready to stop. The team leader says stop. We're going to lift on three. 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to count to 3, and then we're going to lift on 3. So make sure that everybody understands the instructions, how you're going to count, so that one person don't take off, and there's no help coming up with it, or one person's late picking up, and we've got a offset of weight on whatever device you're using. All right, the body drag uses the same body mechanics. So keep the back locked, avoid any twisting, avoid hyperextending your back. Kneel to minimize the distance. You will have to lean over, reaching forward and grasp the patient so that your elbows are just beyond the anterior part of the torso. And bend your knees until your hips are just below the height of the plane across which you'll be pulling. Okay, and here's an example of that, the body drag on the left. And then I'm guessing this person is pulling the stretcher and they're bending their knees there too. So pull the patient by slowly flexing your arms, avoid situations that involve strenuous effort lasting more than 1 minute. Okay. So everything's pretty much in the same position, 15 to 20 minutes, 15 to 20 inches apart, with your knees, even your arms. So you want to kind of pull towards you. Okay. All right, moving the patient across the bed, kneel on the bed to avoid reaching beyond the recommended distance. Follow the steps for the body drag until the patient is within 15 to 20 inches of the bed's edge. Complete the drag while standing at the side of the bed and use the sheet or blanket to drag the patient. Okay. So please watch out for soiled sheets and wear your PPE has always should be. Um, Same thing in a hospital room or ED, you should be using the body drag with the sheet up under there. So, all right, two-person body drag. You and another provider may have to pull the patient with one on each side of the patient, all through the usual pulling technique to prevent pulling sideways. Okay, log rolling the patient's the easiest way to get them on the backboard, even tucking a sheet up under them or maneuvering device. We've got a lot of, I call them tarps, kind of, and there's some other devices out there too. Okay. So kneels closer to the patient, roll the patient without stopping until the patient is resting on the side and braced against your thighs. Always remember, if you do have a trauma patient, make sure that somebody has and the person at the head is calling the shots and keeping the neck in neutral position, as you can see here. Also, if this patient begins to vomit, you may want to look out for yourself. All right, while you're walking and pulling the stretcher, being slightly forward at the hips, the second AEMT is at the head end. So do not push or pull from an overhead position. So don't lift the stretcher all the way up that you're having to push from, shoulders above. Is pretty much what they're saying there. These nice, cool grip bars at the foot end so that you can show the patient where they're going. There's a pretty neat now too. So you're not having to walk backwards quite as much. All right. Whenever possible, use a device that can be rolled to move a patient. So put the foot in, pull the foot in while your partner guides it to the head end. When the wheel device is not available, understand and carry out the certain guidelines for carrying a patient to a stretcher. And when a stretcher must be carried, it is best for 4 providers are available to carry it. So there's more stability there. Each corner of the stretcher is much more safer. If the stretcher must be moved over rough terrain also. All right, the patient is supine on the backboard, is lying in a semi-parallel position on the stretcher. more of the patient's weight rest on this head half of the device than on the foot half. So use correct lifting techniques, and if possible, all team members should be of the same approximate height and strength. Okay, try to guesstimate how much the patient is weighing before you lift them. Some of them are willing to tell you. So two AEMTs should be able to lift the average adult. But if you're not comfortable with it or you don't feel safe doing it, then yes, you'll probably need to call for additional help. Okay. So know your weight limitations, know the weight limitations of your equipment. You may have to get bariatric stretchers and or equipment to come and help you be able to move that patient safely on the stretcher that you have. Okay. All right. When carrying a patient up and down the stairs, ensure the two strongest AEMTs are positioned at the head and the foot end. Do not attempt to lift and carry the patient a significant distance if you believe you are approaching maximum capacity. Okay, this is when stair chairs come into play, and they're very easily have the ability to move them up and down the flight of stairs. All right, move the patient in an orderly, planned, directed, unhurried manner. So as soon as you arrive on scene, you probably need to start thinking in the back of your head how you're going to get a patient out of the residence or out of the situation at hand. If you know you're going to a fall or a NBC, go ahead and taking a maneuvering device up to the scene with you would help. So select methods that involve the least lifting and carrying, share any issue that may result in injury to anyone else involved. Okay, so you need to practice this stuff. You need to plan ahead. You need to know how your equipment works and functions. Okay. All right, lift and carry a patient on a backboard. 4 providers, one at the head of the device, one at the foot end, and one at each side of the torso. Okay, making sure that weight is distributed evenly throughout. Making sure that this person walking backwards can do so safely. So one-handed carry technique, 4 or more providers, each use one hand to support the backboard so they can face forward while they're walking. So basically you've got 4 people on each side. So emergency moves are there, and we use the potential for danger before assessment and care are provided. So if alone, use a drag to pull the patient along the long axis of the body. Okay, so this is when we think there's going to be some unsafe scene, and we really want to get the patient out of there quickly as possible. So we can use the emergency moves. So basically, we're not really concerned with the cervical spine, but we're going to try to protect them as much as possible. Okay, there's the arm drag, and then there is the under the armpit drag that you can do, it's going backwards. All right, here's the one person drags, carrying, lifts. If you needed to use that, you have the ability and strength to do that. All right, urgent moves are necessary when a patient requires immediate life-threatening care in an unsafe environment, such as extreme weather conditions. The patient has got also level of consciousness, inadequate ventilation, or shock when care cannot be rendered where the patient is currently located. So rapid extrication techniques should be used when a patient is sitting in a vehicle and must be urgently moved. All right, non-urgent moves are used when both the scene and the patient care are stable. So you can pretty much plan these out, and you can do them properly and carefully. So make sure there's enough people there, and make sure any obstacles need to be identified. Sometimes some of these houses we go in, we can't even take a stretcher in. So we'll have to plan out other things. We don't trust the entrances going up into the residence because they may not be able to bear the weight. You may have a ramp, but it's metal and full of ice and snow, so that's a whole thing to itself. So every team member needs to be responsible for sharing any issues that may result in injury to anyone involved in the move. So direct ground lift is used for patients with known suspected spinal injury found lying upon the ground. It's used when a patient will need to be carried a distance on the stretcher. So extremity lift is used for patients with no suspected extremity or spinal injuries who are supine or in a sitting position. All right, some transfer moves. Direct carry method, when you pick the patient up, move them over. Draw sheet is the most common one. Just leave the sheet up under them and pull them across. So you can use a backboard, a scoop stretcher, and assist an able patient if they're able to stand and sit. But always be careful with that, making sure they don't fall when they're standing up. Okay, most of these receiving facility floors can be slippery at times. All right, geriatrics may have many different things going on. So they may have osteoporosis with the brittle bones, rigidity, spinal curvatures, from kyphosis and scoliosis. So a lot of these patients can't lay supinal backboards, so they need to void their spaces, or we need to find another way to be able to transport them. Okay, so they also have skin changes that may become more delicate, maybe easily tear, especially in bruise. So if you do cause a bruise, you need to be able to document that. I've seen people just place their arms down on a cold backboard, and unfortunately, it could possibly tear the skin in. And that's just something we have to document. The fear itself. So slow down and explain and anticipate what's going to happen. Let the patient know, look, you're going to go down this, you're going to be placed on this, backboard, just so that we can keep your cervical spine in line. I'll let you know each way we're going to move you. So, if you move them to the right, please let them know we'll move you to the right onto the stretcher. All right. Bariatrics is a branch of medicine concerned with the management of obesity and allied diseases. So back injuries can take a toll on healthcare workers. So 18.5% of all children ages 2 to 19 are possibly obese or classified as obese. So it is a epidemic that we have to deal with, and it's basically just the food that we eat and the intake that we do nowadays, and the less movement that we have, for ourselves a lot of times throughout the day. So this does take a toll on healthcare workers because they're unconscious. We're sitting there having to move them ourselves and try to do that safely. So, all right, a wheel stretcher can be rolled around the ground, weighs between 40 to 145 pounds in itself. So you have to add that weight to the weight of the patient. Okay, they do have a specific head put in. So tubular metal frame is great. So back in the day, we had the old composite metal frames, and they were really small. And I've watched them in that stretcher kind of buckle in the middle because due to the weight we're putting on some of these stretchers. Also, they use when we're redundantly using them over and over and over. So the mainframe of the stretcher is supported on a folding undercarriage. All right, use proper lifting mechanics to lift the wheel ambulance stretcher. The mattress on the stretcher must be fluid resistant, and most patients are placed directly on the stretcher. Some patients will need to be secured to a backboard first. All right, here's a bariatric stretcher. As you can see, it's a little bit wider, able to hold more weight. And then you've got these extra bars here to help push and pull these patients. Pneumatic and electric power stretchers are great, especially low assist stretchers. They're battery operated, so manual controls are the backup to this. So just be making sure that you are familiar with how they work. Make sure that the batteries are charged, and make sure that you have a backup plan whenever you use one of these. All right. So loading the ambulance wheel stretcher into an ambulance, one EMT must hold the mainframe to ensure it does not roll anywhere. Make sure that you use the brakes if needed. So retract the undercarriage if you're going down steps. All right, some include IV pole, some have AED or electrocardiogram shelf on it. Some of them hold portable oxygen units. So just make sure you can understand what attachments you have for your stretcher. Making sure that they're on there properly, and then they, something's not losing, it's going to come flying off. Portable folding stretchers can help a lot of times get you out of situations. So that you can carry them easily to a stretcher. Maybe you have some rough terrain, maybe through the woods for some unknown reason. Patient may be located in a wooded area down a canal or something like that. So they weigh a whole lot less than the wheel stretchers do. And poor people can grab hold of these handles and move them properly. Flexible stretchers can be rolled up so that the stretcher becomes a smaller turbo package. These are pretty cool and provide support and mobilization as needed. And it takes up less space in the ambulance. There's your backboards. We still keep these on the trucks. We don't use them as much. So them should be made of plastic, not wood anymore. But they're there if you need them. Your XP1s or your KEDs to keep the spine aligned in case of a non-urgent move out of a vehicle. So vacuum mattresses fix snugly. The curvatures and contours of the body provides a high degree of mobilization and comfort. Reduces the risk of hypothermia, but it cannot be used on patients weighing 350 pounds more. All right, basket stretchers if you are in need for a rescue effort. Maybe it's a hang or rescue. Once again, maybe you just need to come out of a wooded area. These can be dragged across the ground. They're pretty durable. With that thick plastic and composite plastic that it has on the bottom. And they also do float, I think. All right, that's the scoop stretcher. If you don't have any other method, patient can't be rolled. You can always put each one of these on the sides and then place it together and move the patient that way. All right, stair chairs. I didn't use large stair chairs, and early in my career, when I went to Brunswick County, I began to love the ability to use a stair chair. So they are excellent. The biggest thing about these is coaching the patient, making sure that they understand that they don't need to touch anything as you're going down. That feeling of not being in control does bother a lot of patients, and then we'll push them down a bunch of stairs and stuff. So that track on the back, it folds out and it allows you to basically like a tractor or a anything that has those little tracks on it, go across the stairs easily. All right, moving a patient on stairs with a backboard. Do not use a stair chair if a patient is unresponsive in cardiac arrest. They must be moved in a supine position and must be immobilized to secure them to the backboard. So make sure they're safe on the backboard. Make sure they're strapped in correctly. Usually the feet go first and the head last. That way, if anything is in the cavities, that it doesn't come up and out through the mouth and the orifices. So make sure you do this properly and safely. All right, there's isolettes, the neonatal isolettes. You may see some of those on your critical care trucks, but they need to be this isolate here needs to be strapped and secured onto whatever device that is being wheeled on. All right, make sure you decount everything after each use. We don't stick needles into the pan anymore. You need to wipe everything down. making sure that it's clean, making sure that the antlers of the ambulance that the stretcher is secured into is cleaned also. I've taken a lot of water hoses, parked the back of the ambulance on the downward here, and just spread out the back of the ambulance before. Okay, make sure we ensure that these patients are properly positioned so that they are comfortable. Those patients in the third transmaster need to be placed on the left side, so don't forget about that. All right, if the patient is unresponsive, has no suspected spinal or hip injury, or pelvic injury into the recovery position, so that if they do vomit, we decrease the possibility of aspirations. So transport a patient's nausea or vomiting in a position of comfort. It may maintain dignity for those obese patients. Medical restraints are not really commonly used for us. We need to make sure there's no other medical problems going on first. Maybe the patient could be hypoglycemic, possibly stroking, possibly a head injury for some unknown reason. So we are going to need multiple providers there if we don't want to put them in restraints. So making sure you follow your local protocols and procedures for doing that also. All right, make sure you ask yourself, am I physically strong enough? So do your best to maintain a level of physical fitness. That means going to the gym, maintaining our own physical health. Is there adequate room to get the patient out of this space? Or we're going to have to come up with something different? And do I need additional help? Okay.